Hello and welcome to Slippery People. I'm Liliana Velasquez and I'm here at Wave Dot Studios in Lichtenberg, enjoying the fabulous company of one of my favorite human beings and artists that fortunately happens to be in Berlin this week. We've missed you. Welcome to the stage, Molly Pope.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here, and what a wonderful space. And I'm just so happy to see all this happening.
It's growing. It's growing. So Molly, you and I used to run a podcast together.
It's true. It's true. Two lips.
From my two lips
to your two lips.
Bad advice never sounded so sweet.
Oh my.
That was so long ago.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
And then it also feels like yesterday.
Well, I mean, I guess basically maybe the podcast was 4 or 5 years ago. 5 years ago?
I left Berlin 4.5 years ago.
So it was 5 years ago that we were doing it together.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic. And you moved out of Berlin.
Yep, I left Berlin. I moved to Flat Rock, Newfoundland, where I grew up. It's a tiny village
magical place,
on a giant island on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, and we are so lucky to have you this week because honestly, it wouldn't be the same having this series of interviews without you.
Oh.
You have been a huge, huge part of the beginning process of Sunday Slips, of my creative path in Berlin. And you're an incredible writer, poet.
That's so kind.
Faerie, witch, herbal healer, rock collector, and rock and feather collector.
And I told you I had a feather for you, but my cat ate it.
Well, that's classic.
Classic cats.
Classic.
Well, it goes both ways. Like you've been such a huge inspiration, and Sunday Slips was. That's the first stage I performed on.
Is it really?
Of course.
Did somebody push you to get on stage? Did somebody force you?
I was always that side, I was an audience member for so long and a door.
You were like an audience member in like one of the Muppets that critiqued comedy shows from the corner.
Waldorf and I can't remember the other guy's name, Steiner or something. That's not it, but
because you did the door for We Are Not Amused. You helped a lot of the very beginning of the English comedy circle in Berlin.
There was a period where I was the only door girl. There was Gemused and Neukölln Confessionals, and I think that was it. And I did the door at both of them. And then there
was a period when there were only 2 shows in Berlin in
There
English.
was a period. Well, when I first met the comedians, it was just Sin Club. So that was a monthly. That was the only pure comedy show. Paul ran.
Paul and someone else.
Paul Salamoni had the open mic up in Prince Lauerberg at Joe's Bar, which was actually owned by a guy named Maurice. But anyway, and then there was Buzz Club, and that's where I found.
Buzz Club.
Yeah, but that was, like Sunday Slips, that was an open mic variety.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was trying to remember when Buzz Club turned into Slips.
Buzz Club turned into Toast for a moment with Dan Stern, where he actually toasted bread.
Oh, that's right. He actually had toast on bread.
And it smelled like burnt bread and butter. It smelled like a heart attack. Like every person in the audience was like, I think I'm dying.
Yeah.
That only lasted a few weeks, and then it became Sunday Slips.
Yeah, so I feel like I definitely was at the first Slips, for sure. I don't have it's all sort of a blur back then, but I do remember the first time I performed.
When was that?
It would have been like December 2014, and I didn't really do a lot of poetry.
So that was at the very beginning of Sunday Slips.
Yeah. I'd never really written a lot of poetry. I wrote a lot of stories. I wrote a lot of what I call kind of margin poetry. Like when I was writing heavy philosophical stuff, I'd have these little...
Why do you call it margin poetry?
Because I'd write it in like the margins of the...
Oh, I thought it was like about marginalized people or something.
That does, yeah, it really shouldn't... That's just what I thought of it as. It was like the stuff that showed up in like the margins of my pages that were more...
So it's like to-do list and margin poetry.
And I'd lost a really good friend, and my dog had died on the exact same day, and I wrote this piece that really was, it was one of those pieces where it was, that's the thing with poetry for me, it's sort of this spell almost, like it's a way to conjure the feelings and to, I mean, bottle them sounds like you're shoving them down. I don't mean that. I mean like to protect them and to send them out to the world. And I wasn't planning to perform, but then I got a little push from a magical fairy, and
Yay.
I ended up on stage, and it was amazing.
I don't think my pushes are very little, but I feel like I'm like a elbow into the back of the spine push.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, I mean, and then since then you've been creating a lot more.
Yeah, well, and then you
just
got
been
me
in-
to help host, and and Winton got me to do a little jam with him once, which was so exciting. Like, I feel very musically inept, but getting to do a little poetry with his.
That was brilliant.
That
I loop you, yeah.
Yes, that was so fantastic. And then got in a bit more into the storytelling scene, but Slips was always my home. It was always that
It still
space.
is.
It is.
It still is. We'll have you this Sunday. Being that you have changed homes so much and lives and life paths, and I find you to be a very grounded and connected person, but there have been so many changes in your life. What would you tell your younger self?
I really don't know if I would have listened.
Don't drink that much whiskey, girl.
Slow it down. Slow it down.
Right.
Like breathe and don't take it personally. Like it is not about you.
So many times.
Yeah, I think I got really, especially when I was younger, I was so wrapped up in what people thought, and pleasing people and worrying about, like, I had this anxiety about, I was always embarrassed. It's like every night I was just embarrassed about everything I'd done.
You could remember it?
Well, if I could, but then of course you create it and you're like, you're making it up as you, yeah. And Berlin was a really helpful city to let a lot of that go and to realize that there are times to reflect, like when if you hurt somebody, if you hurt somebody's feelings, I don't think I've ever physically hurt somebody.
Them.
That is something to reflect on. But if you're embarrassed because you were a bit weird and somebody thought you were weird, that is fine. That's actually something to kind of be proud of and
Also, it's like this thing, I'm 45. I thought I was going to be turning 45 in June, but I am already 45. And recently I've been repeating for myself the sentence of like, you're not meant to be everybody's friend.
No.
So like sometimes people might have a reaction towards me where I'm like, oh, I don't think they like me. And I was like, that's right. You're not meant to be everybody's friend. As long as there's respect.
Yeah.
Because you can, energetically, you can also tell when people are kind to you, but they're just like, I don't want more than.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've been saying a lot now. I'm like, oh, that's good. We can be acquaintances. We can be colleagues, or we can be neighbors. We don't need to be friends.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we disrespect each other or that we don't care about each other. It's just like, not my elk. Elk. Where does that come from?
Like elk, like moose?
I guess, but what's not my elk, right? Isn't that the saying?
Not my kind, yeah, like kind or type.
Why did I use elk?
Is it a German? But
I don't know.
Elk in German is elk, I think.
You're gonna
But maybe it's not.
We're gonna have a German.
I'm gonna have to go on a little etymological hunt after this.
Etymological. Listen to the word usage. She's gonna go on a little etymological search. So you tell your younger self to slow down.
And to learn German. No,
I'm sorry.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but in high school, a bunch of my friends went to another high school to learn German. They had the opportunity, and I said, I will never need that. I'm going to learn Spanish.
Pero Mali, ¿tú hablas español?
No. Llamo Molly, y hablo un poquito español. That's like all I remember. Whereas German would have been really useful.
I thought you were really good at German. I mean, I hear you speaking it, and I know you've done translating.
More editing than...
So your writing is better than your speaking?
My writing is better than my speaking. My understanding is better than my speaking. And I lived almost 10 years in Berlin, so I did learn.
You were very fluent by the time you
learn,
left.
but when I arrived, I knew nothing. And so I kind of wish I could just tell myself, like, hey, study a little bit. Like, that's going to be really useful. Yeah. But who would have known?
You were like, no, I want to date a Latino. I'm going to go find them in Germany.
Well, I always preferred the romantic languages,
I find German quite sexy.
Oh, I've grown to love
language.
it. I've grown to really appreciate. And
I love it when they say also, and then they just turn away from you, and you're still in mid-conversation. They're like, yeah, also. And I didn't realize it meant the conversation's over.
It can mean all sorts of things.
Yeah, but that's one of the things
that is one of the things it can mean.
I was on an airplane ride, and the guy was German next to me. We had a really nice chat about his arm tattoo. And then all of a sudden he said, also, and turned and looked forward. He didn't even, we were stuck on the same seating situation, but it was very clear that the conversation was over.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh. Ding.
I do like their straightforwardness. Do you remember one of my last nights in Berlin before I moved back? We went and I had all this sort of sentimental paper that I I didn't want to just throw in the garbage.
The stuff I have at my house, all of your leftover art supplies.
No, the art supplies went to you, but the stuff that was like, I couldn't just throw it out. We burned it. We went to this Wohnplatz where some Berliners were hanging out, and we asked them, can we use your space to do this for a couple of minutes?
That was right by Battanian.
Yeah. And then after a certain while, they looked at us and said,
"Also,
like, you are done. It is time to leave.
This is actually our home. Get the fuck out."
But I really appreciated that. It's like Germans are incredibly straightforward with their
space,
with what they want and what they need and their boundaries.
Yeah.
And Canadians are not good with that. Like, we're all apologetic and we take everything as an offense, and it really taught me to be more comfortable with that.
I feel like we have learned a lot. I mean, we learn more about boundaries as we get older, especially like reestablishing them or communicating them again, because sometimes, and they shift. They definitely shift. But I wish I had met more Germans in my youth, like in the United States or in Colombia. When they were in Colombia, they were quite annoying because they were like, "Oh, I can tell you how to do everything better." You're like, dude, enjoy, everything's cheaper. Just be quiet, like you do in your country. No, but I wish I had, because they definitely taught me emotional boundaries, you know.
Yeah. And it's not
in both directions. Like sometimes it's like, show a little bit more emotion, and sometimes it's like, oh, I am maybe too much emotion. But I don't think either one is right or wrong. It's just nice to learn from each other's boundary dynamic.
Yeah, and not back to the advice I would give my younger self, like not taking it personally. That when someone gives you a boundary, it is not a personal attack. It's them expressing their boundary. Yeah. And like, even if it hurts your feelings, it's just them expressing themselves. So that's not on me. Like, I don't need to take that as an insult. And that took me a long time to figure out.
Yeah. As a Latina, I find it very important because a lot of times people push your emotional boundary on like, you know, the amount of attention or the they don't check in. So like with one of my sisters, we always check in when we have a problem. It's like, hey, I need to go on a rant. Do you have the space for it?
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
But with my other sisters, we don't do that. Oh, all right. So we've tackled those two questions. And Molly, your life plans are just so different than anybody else here in Berlin. What is in the future for Molly Pope, the artist, the woman?
Oh my. A lot of gardening, a lot of mushroom foraging.
There could be so many connotations to that.
Well, I mostly mean chanterelles, but you know, pfifferlinge. And Steinpilz. But then there's other ones too in the fall after the first frost. Like hypothetically, dream-wise, in my fantasies, I would love to create a space in this beautiful spot that I have in rural Newfoundland that could be an artist in residence retreat where I could invite all the amazing people I've met.
Oh my God.
And give people an opportunity if they need
You could get funding for this.
There is funding. This is what I'm learning about, and I'm starting to make some connections back home. And it's, you know, it's a long ways away. There's things that have to happen, but it's manifested exactly.
Amazing.
And that, you know, that would be pretty. So bring some of the artists, the inspiration to me, because, you know, I miss it. But there's also...
We'll have Sunday slips in New Rock, Newfoundland.
Yes, that's
Little
right.
Rock, Newfoundland.
Flat Rock.
Flat Rock, damn it. I knew it had a rock in it. Amazing. So, we hope that we find you visiting Berlin more often.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No more pandemics.
No more, oh God. I know for me it's been a blessing to have you with us, and we hope that you are going to share a little clip of you performing, if you have some video footage of yourself performing.
Unless you have footage from slips, I have never recorded myself.
Well, we might have to take a little video of you performing this Sunday, one of your poems, so that we could submit to the audience internationally, so you can see this wonderful poet in action. And if you like what you see here at Slippery People, if you like what you see here with Slippery People, you can catch us live and in person at Weserstraße 19, Zum Krokodil Bar, every Sunday. no matter what. And we will be releasing a weekly episode of Slippery People for your entertainment at home. Follow us, like, share, comment below. You're the ones that make this happen. Without you, we are just going to keep having all this fun. But it's much better with you following us, sharing our love. And thank you, Molly, so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Liliana.
Thank you, Wave Dots, and we'll see you
Thank
next
you, Wave
week.
Dots.
Check out Wynton Kelly Stevenson's music.
Yeah, woo-hoo. Thank you, Wynton.
Beautiful.